For centuries, Earth was treated like a child at the grown-ups' table, barely tolerated, condescended to, and constantly warned to stay in our place. We obeyed, not because we lacked strength, but because we were watching, learning, letting the galaxy believe the lie that we were docile, backward apes barely evolved from stone and steel. They took advantage of that silence. Trade deals that robbed us blind. Diplomatic circles where Earth was mocked behind polished smiles. Our colonies were supervised by alien administrators, our fleets restricted to orbital defense, our scientists censored under the pretense of peaceful research. And all the while, the Galactic Council patted us on the head and whispered, "Be grateful you're allowed to exist." I remember the first time I saw one of them up close. A Zathari warlord, 10 feet tall, draped in bone-plated armor, his voice like gravel-scraping steel. I was just a lieutenant then, standing guard at a council meeting on Europa Station. He passed by me like I was invisible. Not even a glance. That's when I knew they were afraid. Not of us, not yet, but of what we might become. They were right to be afraid. We warned them, not in public broadcasts or empty speeches, but in quiet, calculated messages. Earth's president stood before the council just once, 30 years ago, and said 9 simple words. "Humanity is not at war. We are restraining ourselves." They laughed, thought it was bluster, theater. They didn't realize that behind our restrictions, our limitations, our pretend deference, we were building, underground, off-grid, hidden in asteroid belts and gravity wells, training men who'd never seen peace, engineering weapons we didn't even dare test. I was born on Mars, in one of the first resistance camps after the trade embargo of '76. Grew up eating synthetic protein, trained to shoot before I could write. They called my generation the buried ones, because we were raised beneath the surface, hidden from satellites and scouts, kept away from alien eyes. We were Earth's shadow, and now we were done hiding. The spark came when they bombed Vega Station. They claimed it was an accident, some malfunction in a Zorathi cruiser's navigation system. But over 40,000 civilians died that day. No one bought the lie, but the council issued no punishment. Just a condolence statement and a warning to Earth. Remain calm. Retaliation will not be tolerated. That was the last warning we took seriously. I was commanding the Argus, Earth's first stealth cruiser, when the gloves finally came off. Orders came in hard-coded, one-time pad encrypted. We were told to head for the Arcturus line and begin interdiction on all alien supply routes. Not harass, not disrupt, destroy. And we did. Quietly. Efficiently. By the time they noticed, 6 trade fleets were reduced to vapor and wreckage. They responded with their usual arrogance, deploying scout ships, demanding negotiations, threatening sanctions. We didn't answer. Then we hit their listening post on Mura 9, a black site the Council denied existed. We exposed their experiments, humans dissected, implanted, drugged, children. That footage spread like wildfire through the underground nets. No more diplomacy, no more patience. Earth's silence was over. The warning was done. Now we fight. My name is Commander Dren Halvik. I am not a politician. I am not a diplomat. I am the storm they pretended couldn't come, and I'm bringing hell to their door. War changes a man fast. It doesn't give you time to think, reflect, or mourn. It just keeps moving, and you either keep up or get buried. After Mura 9, we didn't have time to breathe. The Council labeled Earth a rogue system, and every damn race that had ever looked down on us suddenly had license to wipe us out. They thought we'd scatter, break, surrender like good little primitives. They didn't understand. We never played by their rules. The day after the Mura 9 broadcast, over 50 Earth colonies blacked out their transponders. Stealth protocols activated across the solar system. Civilian factories switched to war production. Every off-world militia was called up, and the global net on Earth transmitted one order, echoed in every language, on every continent. Operation Scorch begins. Humanity answers. I stood on the deck of the Argus, staring at the encrypted briefing flickering across my display. We were being reassigned. No more scouting. No more probing. Strike missions. Target, Drazari Citadel. Outer Ring. That was suicide. The Drazari weren't like the others. They didn't see humans as inconvenient. They saw us as animals. Experiments. Their genetic labs had been studying human biology for decades, always under council protection. Rumors said they'd been trying to create something using human DNA. Hybrid soldiers, maybe, or something worse. No one had ever gotten close enough to confirm it. Until now. The Citadel was buried beneath the ice crust of a rogue moon, guarded by an orbital defense ring and an entire fleet. And Earth wanted us to go in first. I didn't flinch. None of us did. That's what made us different. The men under my command weren't soldiers because they signed up. They were soldiers because they had nothing else left. They'd watched families disappear into council re-education, lost friends to alien bombings, buried loved ones in secret dirt tunnels on Mars. We didn't want medals. We wanted to burn something down. So we did. We dropped into subspace with 6 other stealth cruisers, silent killers, no signals, no warnings. The Drazari fleet was lounging in orbit, arrogant as ever. One of their patrol ships pinged us with a scan. We tore it in half with a single shot. Then we moved fast. Precision strikes, shield disruptors, kinetic payloads. Every Drazari ship that turned to run got a railgun slug through its core. We didn't waste energy on chatter. No mercy, no hesitation. The Citadel's surface defense systems fired back, lighting the ice fields with fire and plasma. But by then, our ground teams were already inside. Hundreds of human soldiers in drop armor, breaching from the underbelly of the moon. I could hear them over comms, shouts, gunfire, screams. Not ours, theirs. I watched from orbit as our people planted charges on every power core, every communications hub. My comm officer patched me into a feed from inside the lab. That's when I saw it. Rows of chambers, each filled with human bodies in stasis. Hundreds of them. Some were barely adults. Some were children. Their limbs were altered, grafted, twisted, mechanical. One of them looked up at the camera. His eyes were glowing blue. He wasn't scared. He didn't even look human anymore. He looked angry. Whatever the Drazari were doing here, it wasn't just science. It was genocide. Twisted, cold, calculated annihilation. That boy, whatever was left of him, wanted revenge. We gave it to him. The charges went off. The Citadel came apart in pieces, fire and ice spiraling into orbit. As we pulled away, I gave the order to broadcast the footage across all known frequencies. Let them see what they'd done. Let the entire galaxy choke on the truth of it. And we added one final line to the transmission. This is just the beginning. The gloves were off now. The game was over. And the galaxy had no idea what it had unleashed. We weren't the same species they met 100 years ago. We were finished pretending. They didn't know how to fight us. That was the first real advantage we had. The Council had spent decades teaching its member species to wage war by rules, negotiated terms, declared engagements, non-lethal standoffs to save face. Even their weapons were designed to disable, not destroy. It was all theater, posturing. But Earth didn't believe in clean wars. We fought dirty. We fought for blood. And we fought like we'd been waiting 100 years to finally hit back. After Drazari Citadel fell, everything changed. Dozens of frontier planets pulled out of Council alignment overnight. Not because they liked us, but because they feared us. News of the Citadel spread like fire in dry grass. The images, the experiments, the quiet efficiency of how we wiped it all out. It shattered the myth that humanity was harmless. And for the first time in galactic memory, the Council was afraid. I felt it in every intercepted communication. I saw it in their scrambled fleet deployments, their frantic attempts to re-establish order. But it was too late. Earth had already lit the fuse. War wasn't coming. It was already in their homes. They hit back, of course. Sloppy, panicked. The Zathari sent a dreadnought fleet straight into the Kuiper defensive ring, thinking we'd still be caught off guard. They were met with fire they'd never imagined. Solar lances cut through their hulls like paper. Planetary railguns tracked them before they even dropped from warp. They came looking for dominance. They left as ash. I was redeployed to Io Base, one of Earth's classified black sites. It was buried so deep into the rock no alien scan had ever picked it up. My squad and I had been assigned to Operation Ember Chain, a plan that made even me pause. Target: Council Core Archives, Delta V Prime. Purpose: steal and erase all human subjugation records. They'd been logging us for years. Every move, every resistance, every scientist, every dissident family. We weren't supposed to know. But we did. Their archives were detailed, cold, and comprehensive, down to genetic tracking codes. We were going to erase ourselves from their system, wipe our history clean from their hands. It wouldn't be easy. Delta V was the most secure station in Council space. No humans allowed, armed patrols everywhere, and an AI security system that had shut down entire fleets with a thought. But we had a weapon they didn't. We had nothing left to lose. My insertion team was small. 6 men, all ghosts like me. No official records, no families left. Just scars and cores. We dropped in using repurposed mining pods, too small to trigger alarm nets, landed hard in the maintenance zone. I still remember the smell. Clean air, sterilized metal, and something rotten underneath, like the scent of arrogance, the belief that they were untouchable. We made it 6 levels in before the alarms hit. That's when things went loud. I moved fast through the corridors, pulse rifle barking at every drone that rounded the corner. The team split by instinct, some moving to breach the archive core, others setting detonators on their data relays. My heart pounded like a war drum, not from fear, from focus. We had 12 minutes. That's what we'd trained for, in and out. Leave a scar deep enough they'd never forget. I reached the main archive chamber just as Doran, our slicer, plugged into the AI interface. He looked pale, sweat pouring down his face. "It's alive," he whispered. "The system, it's watching me." "Let it," I said, planting the charge at the base of the control pillar. "It'll be blind soon." But I'll never forget what the AI said as Doran began the purge. "You are erasing the last proof your kind ever existed." Doran looked at me, waiting for a call. "Do it," I said coldly. "Let them forget us. Let them fear ghosts." And he did. The lights went black. Systems collapsed. Every human file deleted. Every trace of their so-called dominance gone in an instant. By the time their elite guard stormed in, we were already ghosting out the vents. We lost 2 men during the exfil, held the line at choke points so the rest of us could slip out. I don't remember their last words. I don't even think they spoke. They knew what they were dying for. By the time we returned to EO, EarthNet was already celebrating. But I didn't join them. I sat in the dark, staring at a cracked piece of old Terran glass. We weren't winning because we were stronger. We were winning because we remembered every cut, every insult, every life they took. And now, we were returning the favor. They called us monsters after Delta V. The Council issued a formal declaration: "Humanity is a threat to galactic order and must be neutralized." They didn't mention the thousands of humans dissected in alien labs. They didn't mention the colonies reduced to rubble or the families sterilized in council camps. Number, they only cared once we started hitting back. Let them call us monsters. It meant they were finally telling the truth. After the Delta V op, I barely slept. Not from guilt, I'd buried that years ago, but from the weight of what came next. We'd erased our past, burned it out of their archives, no more labels, no more weaknesses catalogued in alien databases. We were ghosts now, untraceable, unwritten. That terrified them. And like cowards, they lashed out at the nearest thing they could find. Earth. A multi-species armada, Zorathi, Varnak, Drazari, and a dozen others, dropped out of warp near Saturn. Over 300 ships, massive dreadnoughts, carrier-class flagships, atmospheric bombers. It was a purge force. They didn't want a war, they wanted extinction. I was aboard the Aegis, Earth's hidden orbital platform buried behind Titan's shadow. It wasn't meant to be a warship. It was meant to be a last resort. Experimental weapons, AI-enhanced targeting, planetary-scale defense systems. And now we had no choice but to light it up. When the Purge fleet came into range, Command gave the go-ahead. The Aegis roared to life, its power grid humming like a beast awakening after a long sleep. I stood at the command deck, watching the incoming wave through reinforced glass. They really think they're going home, I muttered. Beside me, Captain Radan, an old warhound with half his face burned off in a Drazari raid, snorted. They never learn. Let's teach 'em one last time. We fired first. The rail battery cut through vacuum like thunder, spearing the lead cruiser with a tungsten spike the size of a bus. It didn't explode. It just came apart. Silent. Clean. Horrifying. The rest of the fleet responded in chaos. Half of them charged, the other half scattered like spooked cattle. But we weren't done. We unleashed the Aegis's main weapon, Project Vortex. It wasn't a laser or missile, it was gravity. A compact singularity fired into the heart of the enemy formation. Their ships twisted mid-space, metal shrieking under the invisible weight before collapsing in on themselves, like paper under fire. I remember watching one of the Varnak destroyers fold inward, screaming across comms until nothing was left but silence. My men didn't cheer. We weren't here for glory. We were here to survive. And still, they kept coming. The next wave hit hard, ion cannons slamming into our shields, boarding parties breaching outer corridors. Close-quarters combat, ugly, brutal, personal. I led one of the counter-squads myself. My blade found alien throats in the smoke and flashing emergency lights. The corridors stank of ozone and blood. I lost good men, boys I trained, men who bled beside me on Drazari soil. But we held. By dawn cycle, the fleet was wreckage. Saturn's orbit was a graveyard of alien metal and burnt dreams. But they'd gotten one thing right. We were monsters now, not because of what they called us, but because of what they made us become. Back on Earth, the news was chaos. Civilians cheered, but the price was obvious. We were alone now. No allies, no treaties, just a single world against a galaxy that feared its own creation. Command issued a single order across EarthNet. Total retaliation authorized. No survivors, no surrender. This wasn't a war anymore. This was a reckoning. And I knew exactly where we'd strike next. The Council homeworld, the heart of their so-called civilization. The place where they first looked down on us, where they laughed at our warnings and called us primitive. Now, we'd burn it to the ground. The Council homeworld was called Vel Ranis. To them it was sacred, floating above twin suns, bathed in light, home to centuries of smug diplomacy and glittering corruption. The kind of place where leaders drank wine made from fruit that couldn't grow without stolen Terran soil. The kind of place where decisions were made about who lived and who vanished. It was never supposed to be touched by war. But then again, neither was Earth. After the Saturn assault, command funneled every surviving Black Ops squad into a single mission. Operation Final Echo. Our goal wasn't to destroy Velranus. Our goal was to show them fear. I was assigned lead again. Not because I was the best. Half my body was patched up from plasma wounds, and I hadn't slept in 2 days. But because I understood what this mission needed. No heroes, no mercy, no speeches. Just ghosts with guns. We took the Phantom Wing, Earth's most classified vessel. It didn't look like much from the outside. Stripped hull, no markings, built for one thing, invisibility. It flew without heat, sound, or signature. Even the ship's AI didn't speak unless spoken to. We dropped into Velranus orbit through a debris field, hiding behind the wreckage of an old mining rig. The Council's defense satellites didn't even blink. Their arrogance was still intact. They thought no one would dare. They had no idea we were already crawling through their walls. 12 men, full infiltration gear, hybrid armor stolen from the labs of the very species we were about to burn. We hit their high chambers at midnight, planetary time. No warning, no ultimatum. Just execution. Council members died in their beds, their blood soaking silk sheets. Some begged, others activated personal shields. It didn't matter. We came prepared for every defense they had, because they'd taught us how to build them. I personally put a bullet between the eyes of High Chancellor Grell, the one who signed the sterilization order for Earth's outer colonies. He died on his knees, sputtering in disbelief, like he never thought a lesser species would breach his sanctum. Then we hit their broadcast tower. That was the part that mattered. We didn't just want to kill them, we wanted the galaxy to watch it burn. Doran, what was left of him, patched into the stream. His hands were trembling, his cybernetic implants sparking from earlier wounds. But he got it done. Across every screen, every system, from the inner rings to the outer slums of council space, our faces appeared. I stepped into frame. No uniform, no medals, just armor blackened with blood and carbon. I looked dead into the camera. This is Commander Dren Halvik. Earth once begged for peace. You spat on it. You chained us, harvested us, mocked us, tortured our children, and smiled while we bled. I paused, just long enough to let the silence grow heavy. You should have killed us when you had the chance. Then we switched feeds, played every recording from the Drazari labs, every human screaming under the scalpel, every chained child, every recorded slur, every experiment, every shred of their so-called civilization. Let them choke on it. Let every species that followed their rule see what the Council really was. We detonated the core of the high tower live on air. Velranus burned behind us as we slipped back into orbit. The city's outer districts flooded the streets, not in protest, but in panic. The lie was dead. The gods had fallen. And the galaxy saw Earth not as weak primitives anymore. They saw us for what we had become. Avengers, executioners, survivors. I didn't feel pride. I didn't feel victory. I just felt tired. We'd struck the heart and shattered it. But we knew what came next. They'd rally, not out of unity, but out of fear. Not to win, but to stop us. And when they came, they'd bring everything they had left. The real war was only beginning. The retaliation came faster than we expected. 3 days after Velranus fell, the remnants of the Galactic Council formed what they called the Unified Accord, a desperate last-ditch coalition of every species too scared to admit Earth had won. Old enemies became allies overnight. Rival empires kissed rings and shook hands, all to form a single, trembling fist aimed at humanity's throat. They called it a cleansing operation. We called it what it was, genocide with better PR. Thousands of ships warped into Sol system, more than we'd ever seen. They didn't just want Earth. They wanted Mars, Luna, Titan, Europa, every rock we'd ever claimed. This time, they weren't trying to shame us. They were here to erase us completely, to make sure nothing of our defiance survived, and we stood alone. No allies, no mercy, no room for mistakes. But we didn't flinch. Not this time. Not after everything they'd done. We knew our enemy now, knew their weapons, their tactics, their cowardice masked as civilization. And more importantly, we knew ourselves, knew what we were capable of when the leash was off. Command enacted protocol null. Every human warship was activated, regardless of readiness. Every missile silo, orbital cannon, planetary shield brought online. Subterranean hangars opened like jaws in the Earth's crust. Civilian manufacturing lines turned into ammo forges. Engineers welded armor while bombs fell outside their windows. Children were ushered into bunkers while their mothers volunteered for drone control. Everyone knew the stakes. Everyone knew there was no retreat. If Earth fell, there would be no second chance. I was redeployed to Mars, Fort Ares, our final Red Line defense. It was never meant to last long, just long enough to make them bleed. I led the 17th Rapid Response Unit. We called ourselves the Last Wall. The irony? Most of us weren't even born on Earth. Some had never seen the oceans, never walked under a blue sky. But we were ready to die for it. And we almost did. The battle began before dawn. The Accord fleet blanketed Mars' orbit with a silence that felt colder than vacuum. We could see them from the ground, hundreds of vessels blocking out the stars like a storm of steel and fire. They launched orbital strikes first, superheated rods, ion bursts, seismic disruptors. Whole districts were vaporized in seconds. Fort Ares trembled beneath the bombardment. But we held. Our planetary cannons lit up the sky, punching holes in ships the size of cities. Fighter squadrons burst from underground launch bays, dogfighting in the upper stratosphere like swarms of angry hornets. I watched through my visor as 3 Varnak dreadnoughts breached atmosphere, aiming for our power core. We hit them with everything we had: EMP nets, plasma flak, quantum torpedoes. The first ship shattered like glass. The second veered off course and ploughed into Olympus Mons. The third crashed into our west wing. Everything went red. I woke up buried in rubble, one arm limp, helmet cracked. The air stank of melted metal and burned flesh. All I could hear was screaming. Human, alien, it didn't matter. War had no language anymore. But I crawled out, stood up, picked up my rifle and started walking, because that's what we do. Even when the world ends, a human keeps walking. By midday, the skies were falling. Earth itself was under siege. From Mars, we watched her burn. Clouds torn apart by enemy ordnance, fires blooming across continents. I thought that was it, that the end had come. But Earth wasn't done yet. From deep beneath Antarctica, the Atlas Protocol activated. It was something only whispers talked about, something even I thought was a myth. We watched as the crust of Earth cracked open and the sky turned white. Dozens of dark, angular ships rose from the ice, silent, massive, predatory. They weren't just warships. They were the originals, the real fleet, the one Earth had hidden while it smiled and nodded and played weak for 100 years. The enemy paused, and in that silence, Earth finally spoke, not through words, but with vengeance. The hidden fleet lit up the stars with firepower the galaxy had never seen. Ships sliced through Accord vessels like blades through paper. Graviton warheads, ion-stitched torpedoes, nanocloud disassemblers. They screamed, they ran. But Earth was done showing mercy. We weren't trying to win anymore. We were trying to end it. We didn't give them time to regroup. That's how you break an empire. You don't let it catch its breath. The hidden fleet, what the old command called the shackled Titans, hadn't seen space in over 70 years. Each vessel had been built underground, hidden from scans, covered in myths and rumors, whispered about in drunken war rooms like they were bedtime stories for madmen. But they were real. And they were angry, I was pulled off Mars within the hour of their launch. Medically unstable, bleeding into my armor, but I didn't argue. Command didn't ask either. They just slapped a stim patch on my chest, handed me a fresh set of combat files, and said 2 words. You're going home. Not Earth. Not yet. Home was the final target. Velranis was gone, but the Council wasn't. Not entirely. What was left of their hierarchy had gone to ground in a mobile fortress, the Prime Core, a drifting city built into the shell of a planetary husk. It was where the Accord planned to regroup, rally, and rebuild what they'd lost. So we decided to end it there. They had gathered every last piece of their power, every ship, every high-ranking official, all in one place, and we were going to burn it all down in a single night. I was dropped into the heart of it, part of Titan Group Echo, with a 0 survival rate mission. We were to land inside the Prime Core's core reactor network, disable its stabilization grid, and detonate the internal fusion lines. We wouldn't survive. We knew that. We just didn't care. By now, none of us were fighting for medals or legacy. There wouldn't be statues for men like me. There'd be ashes. There'd be whispers, if anything at all. But we weren't doing this to be remembered. We were doing it so they'd never forget. Our drop pods hit the outer walls like thunder. The Prime Core's defenses lit up instantly. Blaster fire, energy nets, acid drones. But they didn't know how many of us were coming. Because the answer was all of us. Every last Earth-based elite unit still breathing had been loaded onto that drop wave. Mars veterans, Europa Ghost teams, exosuit wreckers from Ganymede. Even the old Mars riot squads that had gone dark years ago came crawling out of the shadows for this one. We swarmed their fortress like fire through dry forest. The walls fell first, then the inner levels, blood, metal, smoke, it all became one blur. I lost 3 fingers clearing a shield bunker. Didn't notice until after. Just kept shooting, kept pushing. Then we found the nerve center. It was cleaner than I expected. Smooth white walls, soft lights, automated gates humming quietly. A place that shouldn't exist in a war zone. It was built to feel untouchable, safe. We stormed it anyway. The last Chancellor was waiting inside, tall, cold-eyed, with silver markings across his skin. He didn't plead, didn't scream, just stared at us like we were animals who'd broken into the palace. "You're just proving why you were never meant to sit at our table," he said. I stepped forward, raised my weapon, and answered him the only way Earth knew how. With silence. Then I pulled the trigger. The reactor room was behind the chamber. Doran, barely alive, held up by 2 med bots and bleeding from the mouth, dragged himself to the core panel. "Set the timer," I said. He looked at me. "We're not making it out." "I know." He smiled. "Worth it." He set the core to rupture in 90 seconds. We stood there in the center of their pride and power, watching their legacy begin to fall apart from the inside. All those years they treated us like insects, and now their last hope was melting under our boots. I opened a final channel to EarthNet. "This is Commander Dren Halvik. Mission complete. Prime Core falling." There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years crackled through. "Copy that, Commander. Earth stands." I closed my eyes. We were ghosts, but tonight we became legends. The explosion was supposed to kill us all. We knew that going in, there were no escape pods, no extraction ships, no backup plan. The detonation was meant to erase the Prime Core from existence and take us with it, like a closing chapter written in blood and fire. But war isn't clean. It never ends exactly the way you plan it. I should have died there, inside that collapsing reactor, surrounded by melted steel and vaporized enemies. And in a way, I did. Because the man who walked out of that fire wasn't Commander Dren Halvik anymore. He was something else. When the explosion came, it wasn't instant. There was a delay. Half a second of stillness before the fusion cores tore the prime core into light and sound. That delay mattered. It gave Doran just enough time to shove me into a security vault and trigger the emergency lockdown. He didn't make it. He never intended to. The vault held. Barely. I remember the light outside. Pure white. I remember the sound, like the universe screaming. Then everything went dark. I woke up 3 days later. Rescue drones from one of the Titan ships found me drifting in orbit. Unconscious. Body broken. Suit cracked. They said they almost left me behind, mistaking me for debris. If not for the embedded ID tag in my chest plate, I would have been forgotten. Again, I should have died. But somehow I didn't. And when I woke up, the war was over. The accord shattered. No more fleets, no more council, just broken empires fighting amongst themselves, trying to survive the chaos they created. Their communications were a mess. Some were begging for peace, others wanted revenge. But none of them had the numbers or the unity anymore. They'd underestimated Earth one last time. We didn't conquer them. We made them irrelevant. Earth never claimed their territory. We didn't plant flags or install governors. We didn't need to. We left the ruins behind and let them rot. The message had been made. We didn't fight to rule. We fought so no one would ever rule us again. The following months blurred. Recovery missions, memorial services, rebuilding cities on Earth, Mars, Titan, burying the dead, replacing broken bones and broken minds. I was offered medals, parades, promotions. I refused all of them. What the hell would I do with a medal? Hang it on the wall beside the names of the men who didn't make it back. Number I disappeared instead. Slipped off the grid. Faked my death somewhere out in the Kuiper Belt. Let the galaxy believe the ghost was finally gone. But I still watch. From a cold station buried in ice and silence, I listen to the stars. I hear the whispers. They still talk about us. Quietly. Nervously. Like we might be listening. They call it the Earth event now. They rewrite the history, water it down, call it a conflict instead of a war. Say it was a tragic misunderstanding. Say the humans overreacted. But deep down, they remember. They remember the silence before the storm. They remember the black ships rising from under the ice. They remember the warning Earth gave the galaxy. We are holding back. And they remember what happened when the gloves came off. We didn't ask for war. We were forced into it. And when the galaxy brought fire to our door, we didn't just survive. We became the fire.